This podcast is made possible by the Chicago Institute for Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy and is powered by Podcastle. Welcome to the Rational Harm Reduction Podcast. My name is Jack Slimski. I am a peer recovery support specialist. Today, I am joined with my co-host, my friend and mentor, Terry London. Terry is the founder and director of the Chicago Institute for Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, commonly referred to as REBT. Terry was also trained by the man who created REBT, Dr. Albert Ellis. So we're all in good hands today with Terry. Today we're going to be talking with a volunteer who wants to come on the podcast as a guest to talk about some mental health issues that she's struggled with over the years. Our guest today is Coco Seward. Coco, really glad to have you here, and thank you again for being brave enough to come on and talk with us. We're going to be talking today about public speaking anxiety. For those of you who don't know, public speaking anxiety is one of the most common issues among the global population. Many surveys kind of rank around 75% of the global population as struggling with public speaking anxiety at least some point in their life. So it's extremely common. A lot of people think that, they're the only person in the world who really disturbs themselves that much about speaking in public or giving a speech or like I said, just speaking in public. But it's actually the opposite. You're actually in the minority if you don't ever feel any amount of anxiety about public speaking. So really wanted to give some kudos to our guest Coco today for addressing public speaking anxiety by engaging in public speaking, by coming on our podcast and talking to people that she's never met and going to be published on the internet for any and all to see. So really, just want to say thank you and give you kudos. I think it shows a lot of courage and bravery, and hopefully will help a good amount of people to show other people that, you're not alone in this and there are ways to address it. So thank you once again, Coco. I also kind of wanted to address, some people might be asking themselves, what does this have to do with harm reduction? And my response to that would be, besides the fact that many people commonly use substances or make addictive choices to avoid emotions or avoid mental disturbances, emotional disturbances such as anxiety, we also wanted to show that harm reduction can be applied to many mental health issues. It can be applied to many things other than addiction and STDs, which are kind of the two main things that people think of when you hear the term harm reduction. But the way we approach harm reduction from an REBT perspective is more of a broad approach to harm reduction. So REBT doesn't aim at perfection. It doesn't aim, if you're struggling with, like we're talking about anxiety today, we would never make a promise to someone that if you practice REBT, you will never, ever feel anxious again, that you will completely react perfectly, to many situations that you normally or in the past made yourself feel anxious about. But what we can offer you is a reduction in what we call FIDS, or FID, which stands for frequency, intensity, and duration. So what we mean by that is consistently practicing REBT, and specifically the ABC method from REBT, which is pretty much the heart and soul of REBT. By consistently practicing that, you will reduce the frequency, intensity, and duration of your anxiety or any mental, or any emotional disturbance, such as depression, shame, embarrassment, things like that. So again, not striving for perfection, but continuously reducing the frequency, intensity, duration. Continuously practicing these methods can yield results of, not making yourself anxious as often, not happening as frequently. When you do catch yourself feeling anxious, you'll notice it's not as intense as you continuously, consistently practice it. You'll also notice that the duration, the amount of time that it lasts, that the anxiety, takes out of your day, will be reduced as well. So effectively reducing harm. REBT really is, I would say, inherently a harm reduction approach. I'm not sure if everybody agrees with that, but that's kind of the way that we approach harm reduction. I also just wanted to state that this is not a professional therapy session. This is educational conversation that we're having with our volunteer, Coco, today, about tools and techniques that can be utilized to help reduce things like anxiety. So we'll be utilizing a didactic educational approach today, but still conversational, and just offering some potential tools, some things that could be potentially helpful to our guests today. So without further ado, I'd like to jump right in. So Terry, Coco, thank you both so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
So I know you spoke to me a little bit online about some of the things that you had been struggling with over the course of quite a while, it seems like. You mentioned anxiety and depression. Am I misremembering? Did you also mention ADHD, or am I misremembering that?
ADD.
ADD. Gotcha.
Self-diagnosed autism. I do have the MHTHFR gene, which if you have any clue about it, it's linked to autism. It's a really interesting dive. But yeah, most of my life, so have suffered from depression and anxiety.
Okay. Are you familiar at all with REBT?
No.
Okay, cool. Well, so REBT is about, Terry can explain this much better than I can, but it's about emotional regulation. We are trying to guide you to a healthier place of emotional responses. It's basically based in the idea that no event in the world directly makes you feel any type of emotion. It's more so the event plus your beliefs. So whatever you believe about that event, what you're telling yourself about that event, that more so directly contributes to your emotional consequences. So if I turn my screen off here, we have our little ABC visual here, and that's kind of the I guess the heart and soul of REBT. So Terry, I don't know if you want to kind of.
Yeah, Coco, I just have besides it's nice to meet you, I have a few questions. First of all, have you ever been in verbal therapy before?
Yes, I have.
You know what kind it was?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I can't remember.
All right. And did you ever try historically any of the medication for either anxiety or depression?
I am a recovering benzodiazepine addict.
Okay. All right. So, but as far as getting some of the other antidepressants, not the
I've tried SSRIs. I've tried multiple medications, and my body has a tendency to throw weird reactions to medications.
Okay.
And that is what has led me to trying more of an alternative and different things for my depression and anxiety.
Well, let's split them apart, and then we'll basically see if we have time to take a look and then work on both of them. Let's talk about the anxiety. So when I meet someone at the beginning, and I want to hear you as far as sharing with me again how you experience anxiety, I also basically do a little mini lecture. That mini lecture would be is that in this approach to psychotherapy and self-help, we distinguish between three kinds of anxieties. One is called ego anxiety, one is called general anxiety, and one is called discomfort anxiety. Okay, so all the anxieties that psychologists talk about, like public speaking anxiety, test taking anxiety, interpersonal anxiety, social anxiety, in RABT, we consider that ego based, which simply means in your belief system, you base your total self acceptance, what you are to yourself, and or your total, again, humanity, based in some standard. That could be approval, that could be living up to an idealized image that you must, again, live up to. And either or thinking it would be is that if you don't live up to it, or another version would be is that, well, if I say something, an activating event would be is that the person could reject me or criticize me. And they might. At B, in your belief system, you would, one, catastrophize. It would be horrible and terrible. Meaning I couldn't cope with it, never will be able to. Life would be worth living. And then what we call a label would be, and that would really prove how inadequate, worthless, and rotten I am as a total person. So you're basing your total self-acceptance totally on needing a guarantee, not just needing approval or guarantee that you will not be rejected or again criticized in order to accept yourself at all. And we call it ego-based anxiety. Does that fit at all with what you struggle with?
Some.
Okay. All right.
Um,
All right. Now, general anxiety, what we call general anxiety, is basically, again, would be I walk out my door, and the activating event would be as I say goodbye to all my pussy cats. I have 4 of them. And I get in my car, go to work, and I start to think, because I'm a human being, gee, did I turn off the gas in the stove? Did I basically, again, shut all the windows because, they're house cats? And I then have a belief, which is a belief, but it goes into the activating event, is, well, what if I left the door open or the window open, they might get out. And if they get out, I might never see them again. And oh my God, that'd be awful and horrible and terrible. I couldn't bear the thought that, the cats I love basically would be gone forever. And I must have the guarantee that everything's safe, or again, everything's done the way it's supposed to be done, so my cats are okay. So it has nothing to do with being a good or bad person. It's just, again, demanding absolute guarantees of certainty and safety, and then catastrophizing when they don't exist. Does that fit at all?
yes.
All right. And the last one, which I think, again, you can kind of chuckle at, is that we're the only animal that's evolved that we can make ourselves anxious about being anxious. So discomfort anxiety is, and once you're feeling anxious, okay, and just proves you're a human being who's not thinking rational thoughts and you're creating anxiety, you then can become aware of your own anxiety and say to yourself, oh shit, this is horrible and terrible to feel anxious. I mustn't feel anxious because I can't bear it. And then you can make yourself anxious about feeling anxious, or make yourself panicked over your own anxiety. And that's a very, very, again, common one also. Okay, so that's another one that you struggle with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just go back to the general anxiety. Give me an activating event. That's just a jargon. Is that when something has taken place or there's some decision to make, and you start to experience, again, let's say a level of anxiety high enough that it's uncomfortable. You don't want to have it at all. Can you give me? You don't have to give me the worst example. Can you give me an example, an illustration of that?
Doing speaking,
Say,
doing any kind of speaking, like doing these podcasts scares the dickens out of me. But I know in my own therapy that I've learned that I have to overcome the monster of anxiety and do them, because I never know who's going to be helped by listening to what weird words I can say.
well, first of all, it's a wonderful, wonderful core values that, but by you going through discomfort and having courage to face it, someone else can learn something that will be, again, positive those in their life. Along with, you're quite correct, basically, is that when we make ourselves anxious in situations, we tend to avoid them. And the act of choosing to avoid them guarantees you'll be more anxious, again, next time or maybe for the rest of your life. Okay. Now I have a hunch, but let's see if my hunch is correct. So the activating event is doing what you're doing right now. But in spite of feeling anxious, you still have the courage to basically do it. All right, but let's go to what I would call the first level. So the activating event is, again, speaking on Jack's podcast. And at C, that just calls that we call that your most severe consequences, is that if you're experiencing anxiety, we go back to B. So what do you think is going through? And by the way, the beliefs that are the most important when it comes to creating unhealthy emotional consequences like anxiety are the most automatic and the quickest. And so often when I ask a person that question, they make themselves anxious because they go, well, I don't really know what I'm thinking. I go, well, we'll figure it out. All right, so here we go. If you were thinking this, even if I'm uncomfortable, I got the guts to do what I'm doing right now. I'll do the best I can. And if it's not good enough, it won't be the end of the world. I can still give myself credit for having the guts to face my own anxiety. And I'll hopefully learn from it. If you only were thinking those preferential rational thoughts, you would be anxious. You'd only be excited and concerned to do this. So I think you're thinking again at A, there is a belief at A, is that, well, I'm going to face my anxiety. However, I could fuck it up, come across badly, not speak very well. That goes under A, which is that you could, again, do poorly or fail, even though, again, just even trying it is a success. And at B, if you tell yourself, and as I must not, as I ought not screw up, because if I do, those people think less of me, or they'll think I'm an idiot, or they'll think, again, badly of me. And that's often horrible because it makes me feel inadequate, worthless, and no good. I call it shithood. All right.
Right.
So this case, it's not general anxiety. It's just, it's ego-based anxiety.
Ego-based.
All right.
Okay.
So the way we work it again in REBT is we then go to D, which is called disputing. And the first question I would ask, for the first belief I would challenge, not that you have it, it just proves you're human, nothing more, nothing less, is what we call labeling. Okay, so here's my question. Do a role reversal with me. If I say, well, I did a podcast and I did the best I could, but I didn't really come across very well, and people did think badly of me, do you think that proves I'm a totally rotten person? What would you say to me?
No.
You would say, I would
No.
think, well, first of all, people have the right to their opinion. Okay.
Right.
And if they want to be that conditional, is that because they had a poor performance on some show, then I'm a rotten person? Well, it kind of says something about how they look at other people.
Look it up. Yeah.
But here's my question. How could their rejection, or all of them rejecting me, prove I'm an inadequate, worthless person?
It can't.
No, it can't. If you really
You
stop
allow
to think
it
about it
to
again. Here's another one again that Jack has heard me do numerous times. If you had to choose between everyone's approval or oxygen to breathe, which would you choose?
oxygen to breathe. That's an
Because
easy one. I don't need everybody's approval.
that's right. Now, if we can convince you of that, and this is something that I've not explained, hopefully again, this again will make total sense to you. There's a silly term that Dr. Albert Ellis invented. I don't know if it's silly, but again, when people first hear it, it's called the theory of masturbatory thinking, not masturbating, but masturbating. And here's a statement. Our brains, your brain and my brain, everyone's brain in the world, again, have evolved for survival and pleasure. And our brains cannot tell the difference between a belief, an image in our mind's eye, or an event in the world. And if I tell myself is to be rejected is horrible and unbearable, a fate worse than death, my brain will then read rejection as a life-threatening circumstance, and physically it will respond as if my life is literally on the line. And so again, would be is conditional self-acceptance, stupidly normally called self-esteem, is if you say to yourself, well, if I fucking do great and they think I'm terrific, well, then not only would you feel safe, but you would again feel quite elated. But it's conditional self-acceptance, because the next thought would be is, but what if next time I don't speak well and they reject me? Oh my God, that would be horrible, terrible. I couldn't bear it. And our brain can't tell the difference between a belief and an event in the world. It's going to create what's called, again, a fight or flight response. And we basically experience it as anxiety. All right. So with all that, let's go back to the labeling, not of your behavior. So if I said it this way to you, could we prove that you could speak poorly? Yeah, me too. We all do. Okay. All right. But how could a performance, but more importantly, if people really thought less of us because we didn't speak as well as they wanted us to, how the hell would that prove that we're rotten, worthless people? And the answer is it doesn't.
Doesn't.
So again, a rational thought would be is that I still refuse to base my self-acceptance on their damn opinion. Or another rational thought could be is I need oxygen and air to survive, but I can accept myself and survive and enjoy life without people's approval. So we keep hammering again, not wanting and preferring. That's fine. That's again the idea that wants and preferences are all good, but when you change any preference into a demand, a command, or necessity, you'll create physical stress and emotional misery because our brain can't tell the difference between a belief and event in the real world. All right.
Right.
Next belief. Awfulizing means three things concretely. One, if you get rejected, you're going to die. Well, we know that's horseshit because we've all been rejected numerous times and survived. You can make yourself miserable over it, but you're not going to literally die. It also means when people are catastrophizing, well, I won't die, literally. However, life will not be worth living in any way, under any condition, until I do die. Well, let's talk about that one. So if the whole world rejected you, but they didn't beat you again to death with a stick or anything like that, or starve you to death, so you could still basically, again, do many things in your life that you would enjoy. You might enjoy them more if you had friendship or, again, approval from other people. Wouldn't your life still be worth living even if someone rejects you? And the answer is yes. We have credible evidence again. Now, you could stubbornly say, oh no, life won't be worth living, and poor shitty itty bitty little me, if no one loves me, is that why stick around? You could think yourself into misery on a daily basis for years, but you wouldn't have to. You could think it through. Okay. And then last but not least, basically, is, and I don't think I explained this as clear as I want, Coco. Let me do it this way. You change any desire and do this with me. I have a desire that you like me. I would prefer that you like me as you meet me again on this podcast. Okay. And I'm assuming you have the preference is that you want me to like you. Anything wrong with that? No.
No.
That's a healthy preference. So wishes, wants, and preferences are all good. It's part of what makes us uniquely human. But when I or you say to ourselves, well, I just don't want Coco to want, I don't just want Coco to, again, accept me for who I am or like me, but I must win her approval. I need her acceptance and approval. Otherwise, I'm rotten, worthless, no good, and life isn't worth living. That's how you create the ego anxiety. All right. So if you were working with me or Jack or someone who does REBT, we would teach you the ABC. So the activating event is speaking on the podcast. The C is ego anxiety. And I'm going to give you a compliment. And I don't give compliments falsely. Is that you don't have discomfort anxiety, because if you did, you wouldn't be doing this. You'd be phobic. You'd avoid it completely. So I give you great credit that in spite of feeling uncomfortable and anxious, because of your wonderful values and your courage, you're still basically doing something that you're not very comfortable to do. And the premise would be, if you kept doing it over and over again, the fact of doing it by using your own behavior to face what you make yourself anxious over, that in itself would be very helpful to get rid of the anxiety or decrease it. Because the more we expose ourselves, we're basically, again, to get desensitized by our own life experiences. Okay, so let's put this together. So next time you might hear yourself thinking, oh shit, I'm going to do the podcast because, again, I have some really good reasons to do it, and I also have the courage to accept I might be uncomfortable. And your first thought would be well, what if I screw up and people think less of me? Well, that would prove I'm worthless and inadequate. What could you replace the part of the belief that you'd be inadequate and worthless with? What could you replace that with?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I have found that people judge my story, and there is two reactions: either they love me or they.
Let me help you a little bit, because again, you've never done this. So when I say help, when I say replace it, we call it, again, a coping statement. So you might not believe it's strong enough, so the anxiety is completely gone, but you keep practicing it and rehearsing it in different ways. So I'll give you one. I will not base my self-acceptance of what people think about me. You think that's a good one?
Right.
You like that one? Okay, so if you're my client, I have you write that down and go practice it. Here's another one. I need water to survive. I don't need other people's approval to survive and accept myself. Okay. Another one could be, I still refuse to base my self-acceptance on what people think of me. I still refuse to base my self-acceptance. And those would be replacements for the labeling, the overgeneralizing that you're all good or all bad because of what people think about you. Let's try another one. If you're thinking, oh God, is that if these people don't like me because I don't live up to, again, what they're looking for, that would be awful and horrible. I couldn't bear it. It would be a fate worse than death. What could you replace those thoughts with?
What if they do?
No.
What if they do like you? What if your story can make a difference? That's what.
Yeah, but you see, that's not going to work for you, because basically because how your brain and my brain works, you say, well, that's a nice thought, but what if I fuck it up and my story doesn't doesn't help them do better? And then you'll still think, again, you're a rotten person because you didn't do what you ought to do, and again, live up to your desire to help other people. Now, I'm not challenging the desire that you want to speak well and that your story will help other people basically deal with what they're working on and struggling with. But remember, I think you have two beliefs in this case, you have two beliefs in your belief system. One is a strong preference to tell your story to help other people. And that's wonderful. I embrace that.
Right.
But then you kind of fuck it up by saying, well, but if I tell the story, I must tell it the right way.
Right.
Really ensure the right way, because if it's not, that would be awful and horrible, not only because you're rotten because you didn't do it as well as you want, but because of what they might think about you, or they won't get out of it what you want them to get out of it. Okay. So let's do it again. So the belief would be, if I don't speak well, or I don't tell my story well, and people don't get anything out of it, that would be awful and horrible. I couldn't bear that. I would suggest you have replacements like this. That would be disappointing that I didn't do as well as I want, but I could bear it and just try to do better next time. Or stop and take a deep breath. It would not be the fucking end of the world. It'd be an unpleasant moment, which I could deal with, and then learn from it to try to tell my story better again when I have another opportunity. Or Jack has heard this one over and over again. Can you give me something that you still could cope with emotionally and you wouldn't die physically, but would be much worse than giving a bad, not a that speech, but not speaking as well as you want and having people get what they want out of it or thinking less of you? Can you give me like one example that would be worse?
Being told you can't drive anymore.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I try to come up with things like, how about 100 paper cuts on the eyeball? Would that be worse than being rejected?
Yes.
Okay. Or another one of my favorite ones is that a relentless diarrhea for 6 months. Would that be worse than again being?
No, thank you. Yeah, that would be worse.
All right, so that could be a coping statement. The coping statement
Right.
would be is that, well, this is unpleasant to be rejected, but it ain't again diarrhea for 6 months.
Ain't diarrhea for 6 months.
All right.
Right.
And by the way, because you're going to have a copy of this again, those are kinds of things again, is that if it makes sense to you, you can pull those off again,
Awesome.
do it that way. All right. So in REBT, which is obviously a cognitive philosophical approach, our emotions mainly come from, again, not the events they contribute or influence. They have something to do with how we make ourselves feel, but they mainly come from our belief system, as Jack said. And in your case, the one that we're going over today is what would classically call public speaking anxiety, but we really call it ego anxiety because anytime you base your total self-acceptance. See, you have an interesting version, by the way, Coco, in my opinion. You're not perfectionistic, is that you must give a great speech because you want to. Your version is that I must speak well enough to get my story across, because if I don't in a positive way, not only that would be awful, but that you'll have let people down and they might think less of you. And that would be the unbearable part of it. So it's really the dirty approval. It's not trying to be perfect. But the demand would be is that I must speak at least well enough to win people's approval or to live up what they expect from me. Because if I don't, that would be the catastrophe. And that would prove that you're rotten, worthless, no good. And that's what we call it, all or nothing, all thinking, or again, conditional self-acceptance. So our goal is to get you to have unconditional self-acceptance, that you still would be disappointed or regretful if you didn't speak well, or people basically didn't get your message and they rejected you. That's an unpleasant moment. But again, completely eliminate basing your total self-acceptance one way or the other on what people think about you. We call it the dire need of approval. And remember, you change any healthy desire into a necessity or a must or got to, that's when your brain will create, again, fight or flight response, and again, dreaded anxiety.
Yeah, and
So
just to,
go ahead, Jojo.
yeah, just to make sure we're not moving too fast. I want to make sure it makes sense to you, because as Terry was saying, REBT is all about catching yourself when you're taking any rational want or desire, like the want to speak well or get your story across, and you convert that into a need. I don't just want to, I need to speak well. And when you catch those type of irrational thoughts that lead to your anxiety,
and
that's when that's where the real work is. That's where you dispute those. You catch that, you dispute it, and then you replace it with a healthier coping mechanism. Is this making sense to you?
That does make sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's why, by the way, again, thank you, Jack, is that he knows REBT very well indeed. Basically is that, see, the questions people ask me, even if I didn't talk as quick as I did, well, all this makes sense, but am I supposed to remember all of this when it really happens next time? And the answer is no, you won't. Because like any other learning habit, any habit formation, you kind of get it intellectually because you're smart. You'll understand it. But to apply it takes time and it takes rehearsal practice. So, for example, again, my friend, I'm referring to as a friend or my client, but to me, they're the same thing, is that I basically might say to you, we'll do a little imagery on a daily basis. Close your eyes, imagine basically being on a podcast or talking to someone, and the image is basically negatively is that you're not speaking as well as you want, or you start to think basically again that they might think again less of you. And that's when you practice your coping statements. Stop and take a deep breath. It's unpleasant, but I can bear it. Again, I'm not going to base my self-acceptance on their opinion one way or the other. I'll just try to do the best I can, but I don't have to do anything to accept myself completely as a person. And you keep practicing just like anyone else who's doing mental, again, rehearsal and practice and cultivating a different way of thinking. I also would recommend, by the way, again, Ellis, Dr. Albert Ellis, was the founder of REBT. He wrote a great book called How to Control Your Anxiety Before It Controls You.
Really?
Yes, and I think that it's a wonderful book in that it's very well written. What we're talking about is exactly what's in the book.
Okay.
So again, just have to go over again the ABCs with you, obviously, and again, how to challenge and dispute the irrational beliefs. And believe it or not, by the way, is that RABT, which is scientifically based, is that no matter what language a person speaks, no matter their gender or their background, there's only 4 categories that people basically generate because it's a tendency in human nature, not only to be rational and realistic. And the first one we call the masturbatory thoughts. If you take any desire, I prefer to do well, therefore I must, or because I prefer to do well enough to win people's approval, I must do well enough because I need people's approval. So it's not using the word I must, but it's using the word I need their approval. That's the first one we look for. And you can do it in 3 ways. You can do it towards yourself, as we're talking about, that you must do well enough to win people's approval. You can do it towards other people where you basically start out by saying, I prefer, which makes total sense, that people treat me the way I treated them, particularly if I treat them with dignity and respect and kindness and love. But when they choose not to for their reasons, and you say, oh, but they ought to, they must, those bastards or those bitches, for not doing the right thing, you create anger, hostility, and condemn them as total people versus, again, not liking their behavior. And the third one is towards role conditions, where again would be is that I often say this, when I wake up in the morning, I strongly prefer not to have a splitting headache and be sick. I prefer, again, to be, again, healthy versus ill and pain. I prefer when I get in my car that if I turn the key, that the damn engine starts. I prefer in the middle of the winter, again, when it's cold as heck, that my furnace works. So human beings have a tendency, which makes total sense, to want easy, pleasant, comfortable conditions. But Coco, I think you'd agree with me, but the world doesn't give a rat ass about it. So basically, again, when shit happens, it happens. But if you say to yourself, but it ought not to happen to me, or how dare I have it with crap I'm not in the mood to deal with, and therefore it must not exist. Now you're demanding that even reality can't be the way reality is, even though you would prefer it to be different. And that's what we call, and that's the manliness. Then there's the awfulizing, the LMT, and the labeling. We kind of did that on the fly. Okay. All right. So I know it makes sense. Can you see yourself using this?
Yes, actually, I can.
Okay.
And a lot.
Okay. And so I would recommend get Ellis's book, which is easy to get, How to Control Your Anxiety Before it Controls You. You had a resource in Jack. I don't know how you guys met each other, but basically it would be is that, and Jack could give you my information. Again, if you want to have more contact with me, it'd be a pleasure, and I will do anything I can to help you. And also because the way my institute is, it's a 501c3, it's not for profit. If you want to do therapy with me, it would cost you anything.
Awesome.
Right. So do you have any questions about what we just did?
No, I don't. Actually, I look forward to being able to go over the meeting again and kind of pull some key points and go from there.
All right. And basically, again, okay, the answer to the question is that something good happened for you. It sounds like it did. You look a lot more relaxed than we started, so you're feeling a lot more relaxed.
Yes, I have to keep myself in check to remember that just because I have had bad experiences with speaking, like I had my life turned upside down because I couldn't say the right word, literally, and like near death kind of situation. And I have to teach myself that not every situation is going to be like that. And I think that this could be a way to retrain that brain.
That's correct. I use the phrase a lot in my group work with you, is that how to retrain your brain still starts with how you think, because once more, is that you've heard that before. See, our brains cannot tell the difference between a thought and an image in our mind's eye. It responds exactly the same way. So if you're thinking is that, well, because something, again, could have been life-threatening one time because of what I said or didn't say, well, then we overgeneralize and say it happened once, it could happen again. Would that be awful and horrible? It must have again. And so you still would be, again, working on your thinking to retrain your to get the newer pathway. So, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Awesome.
So good enough for today?
Yes, I feel fine.
And I just wanted to double check just to make sure. I mean, I know you mentioned, and I don't know, Terry, how much time you have if you're trying to jump. But I know you mentioned depression too. So I don't know if there was any, kind of specific events that you, the last thing that you felt yourself, feeling depressed over, if you kind of
the only decision I made was that it's not because of my time. We could work on, again, something she depress herself over, but again, why don't we just leave it with anxiety right now? Let her digest
that. Would be preferred, please.
Okay. Don't want to overload. Don't overload you.
Because again,
it brings up a lot of
she's very brave and courageous, and she did very, very well. And again, would be used that. But then, so if she wants to take a look at how you apply REBT to, again, depression, obviously she would in the future. We'll work on it.
Right? So, sounds good.
All right.
Well, Coco, do you have any
How
questions?
did I find you on Facebook?
Probably, I shared all over, so it's probably in some recovery group that I shared on.
Recovery group. Yes.
I also,
I'm in.
there was a little bit of like advertising as well, so that you might have seen an ad
If
for it
you're
as
in
well.
recovery groups, that's
Probably where, yeah. I shared it all over, all
Yep.
abstinence-based harm reduction, all sorts of different groups. So
it was a marijuana maintenance group, I believe,
oh, okay, cool.
or a
Yeah.
harm reduction group, one of the two. I love
Yeah.
them both.
And
So
REBT kind of goes hand in hand with harm reduction in that way, where it's not geared towards making you perfect and never feeling anxious or never feeling depressed, but it reduces the frequency, duration, and intensity. Did I say that right?
I would say FID, but that's beside it. But frequency, intensity, and duration, same thing.
So yeah, and so you're reducing the amount. It doesn't last as when you do feel anxious. It doesn't last as long. It doesn't happen as often, and it doesn't feel so intense when it happens. The more you practice it, you lower all three of those, and you're
and the medical term is refractory. Is that how quickly you recover, or how you self-soothe and control your emotions in a healthier way? So you work on it.
awesome.
Yeah. And one thing that I don't think we touched on that much was when you do catch yourself with those irrational beliefs of like, this is unbearable, or, oh God, it would be awful if I mess up. When you dispute those beliefs, do it in your head with a little bit of like oomph, a little bit of like a volume, because normally the irrational belief is like, oh, I'm a fuck up. If I fuck up on this, I'm a fuck up, and it's very powerful. And if you dispute it with a timid voice that's more like, no, I'm not a fuck up. No, I'm not.
No, it's not going to work.
Which one are you going to believe? Yeah, which one are you going to be the stronger belief?
It won't work.
Right. So you want to go like, no, I'm not a fuck up. No, I'm not. Like, no, it doesn't make any sense that I would, of course I'm displeased that I didn't speak as well, but it's not the end of the fucking world. You say it in a way that really gives it some power. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So we found that my daughter and I and my husband found that the best way to sometimes combat my spirals that I have gotten into on what if, because 1,000 bad things can happen, but what if one good thing happens?
Yeah, so I would support that, but see if this makes sense to you. You see if I can get you to say something else to make yourself laugh. I have clients who'll say something like this. Well, I really want to go somewhere in the world, but I won't get on an airplane. So in their case, they have, again, even what's called discomfort anxiety, because they'll think like, well, I can't get on the plane because I'm too scared, or so horrible, terrible, feel anxious. Again, will be I just can't do it. But if we go down to what I call the first level, I'll say to them, your belief is you must have an absolute guarantee that the plane won't fucking crash, because you can't bear the thought of dying. All right. So then if I say to them something like, well, do you realize, even with recent happenings is that you're much safer in a commercial jet plane than you are driving your own car, etc. This is what they'll say to me. But with my fucking luck, even if it's a 1 in a million, I'll be the 1 in a million who's still going to die in a plane crash. So you see, if you worked with me, I wouldn't go about that. It could, again, turn out positive. I would say it this way: you're a smart woman who lives in the real world, and there's no absolute fucking guarantees of safety and security, correct? There's not.
Correct.
But when you start to do, you don't do it on purpose. It's a habit. Well, what if this happens? What you're really saying is, I must have an absolute fucking guarantee those horrible things can't happen to me or people I care about. And you even know that there's no guarantees, correct?
There isn't.
So why are you demanding it? Because you're a screwball like the rest of the human race, because humans have a tendency to do this. So in RAG, we would say, well, don't think of the brighter side. Just assume, one, there is no guarantee, so I'm not going to demand one. And two, and it's an unpleasant thought, but thoughts are unbearable. They're unpleasant. Again, what could happen in the future? And if the goddamn thing happened, why couldn't I bear the thought it could happen to me? And the answer is, you just did, and you can if you keep working on it. Is this making sense to you?
Right.
So that'd be another strategy, would be, is that instead of trying to say, Well, it could turn out positively. You go, no, let's just assume, unfortunately, it turns out negatively. Would that be unbearable, the thought that I might fail or get rejected? Or basically, again, would be, I could cope with it, and you keep working on it that way. Now, remember, again, as I said to Jack, you've never done RMBT before, and I'm a Gatling gun, so I think you're doing terrific because it makes sense to you, and then you'll take your time to digest it and then see how far you go with it. And again, I'll make the same offer. More than happy to work with you for free. And Jack could again support you too in how to use RDBT to get rid of your anxiety or depression or dramatically decrease it.
That would be so amazing. It really would.
Well, all right. So
Yeah. And that's, like you had said, you go with the what ifs a lot. You spin out on a million what ifs, and REBT is actually really useful to address those what ifs, to actually, not, because something that I've heard, Terry said a bunch of times is the oh, now I'm gonna butcher it. What you resist will persist. Is that the what you try to not think of? You try not to think of something, you're almost guaranteeing you're gonna.
well, she had another strategy, which isn't all right or all wrong. The strategy would be is instead of thinking about the negative things that could happen, you could think about positive things. But if you basically have a tendency to look for absolute guarantees, you'll basically still come to the conclusion is that I still don't have a guarantee the good things will happen. I need a guarantee to feel safe now. So it can work, but it doesn't work really well. Where an REBT would say, you're assuming the worst anyways, but let's assume not that you're going to sabotage or purposely screw something up. You do the best you can. And if it doesn't work out, why can't you fucking bear? There's no guarantees in the universe because there are none. So it's silly to demand that I must have a guarantee that it won't happen to me or people I care about. And then two, basically, again, would be you ask yourself the question, just because I think it doesn't mean it has to happen. But even if it does, why can't I bear the thought that could happen to me? And the answer is, I just did, but I could do it gracefully. Tell myself is that I can cope with it, or I will cope with it. And if it's something that's life threatening, so that either you pass out, you're dead forever. Then once you're dead as a duck, it doesn't make any difference, anyways. But up to that point, you can cope with anything if you choose to work on it. So,
Now, does this RBT? I can't remember the letters you used.
you got it.
REBT. Did I get it right? Okay.
Yeah.
Does it help with PTSD?
Yes. Yes, because again, depending on what the activating event was historically, and again, obviously,
It was a difficult one. I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD until 2021. And it was because I had a son stillborn in 1990. So I had doctors actively telling me that it wasn't PTSD that I was suffering from.
well, then you and I, again, we could do it now. I would ask questions again would be, is that, did you have, again, intrusive thoughts that nightmares that would wake you up? Did you have, again, like a numbing in your body? There's characteristics of post-traumatic stress disorder, but I'm a clinician is that, yes, I want to use, again, clinical language, but I'm not tied to it. So the point basically would be is that anyone in their right mind who loses a child, that's going to be, again, painful. And then I'd ask questions again would be, is it how often, not did you think about it, but again, are you not purposely, but is there depression there? Is there, okay. And if there is, we'd work on it. We'd still do the ABCs because again, we can't change the activating event. It's the sadness again of losing a child, but we still would be looking in your belief system about what you still are thinking about that loss that would lead not to grief or bereavement or sorrow. Those are healthy emotions, or sadness. But if it was leading to depression or even feelings of somehow guilt, or must have done something wrong or so, we'd figure it out and we'll work with you on that.
Awesome.
So,
yeah. REBT is one of the only, or maybe the only, I don't know if you can clarify that, Terry, one of the only, or the only form of therapy that really draws a line between healthy negative emotions versus unhealthy negative emotions.
So let me see here, Jack. Right. It said there's about 10 unique aspects of REBT compared to other cognitive behavioral therapies or therapy in general. And one of them is we think is a scientifically based theory of what we call healthy negative versus unhealthy negative. So if someone said to me, I lost a child 10 years ago, and I still at times have sadness and grief and sorrow, those are not disturbances. Those are healthy negative emotions. If someone said to me, well, no, it's not grief, or it's not just, again, sadness, but it's a depression or despair, self-pity, then we consider those, again, genuine emotions, but are unhealthy, and we work at getting rid of them or dramatically decreasing them. So the culprits are things like concern versus anxiety, guilt versus remorse, anger versus frustration, grief versus depression, Again, shame and embarrassment in comparison to disappointment, regret about being rejected. So our ABT is not trying to educate people to be unemotional, but to show people how to manage their emotions moment by moment in a healthier way, and more often experience emotions that are, again, healthy and allow them to cope with life versus leading to physical stress and emotional misery that's needless, again, as they continue again to work on their thinking. I'm within a form of therapy that's why, so I know that really has that theory.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
So in your case, you would want to be excited about meeting new people and sharing your story. You'd be concerned about doing it well. And again, it would be regretful again is that, by the way, you do realize, Coco, you could do it tremendously well and people still wouldn't give a shit because that's up to them. But anyways, right. So you still would say, well, I could have done it better. So it's regretful or disappointed. I didn't speak as well as I wanted. That's okay. But if you then ended on, oh no, that's awful and horrible because it proves again what a rotten person I am. But I still insist, by the way, to both of you, I don't think Coco's major philosophy is that because she wants to share her story, she must do it perfectly well. Otherwise, it's awful and she's no good. I think her version is more the calm version would be is that since I want to speak well and share my story, I must do it at least as well so people get what I want them to get, or if people won't think badly of me. So it's more I think the dire need of approval. Would you agree with that, Coco?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you're gonna be working on. So
Awesome.
okay. So all right, Jack, good enough for today?
I think so. Yeah, Coco, as long as you're satisfied, you felt like
I
it was
am.
helpful.
Thank you. Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Well, you're more than welcome.
Enjoyed it.
It was it was a pleasure meeting you. And again, if you want to contact me, Jack, give you the information.
Awesome. I will do that.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. And we will all keep in touch. And yeah, thank you so much, Coco, again. Really appreciate you guys both. This has been an episode of the Rational Harm Reduction podcast. If you're interested in volunteering to participate and come on as a guest to talk about any mental health issues that you're currently struggling with or would like some feedback or guidance on, you can find us on Facebook at Rational Harm Reduction, or you can email us at rationalharmreduction@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening and stay safe out there.